Hello. If it's Tuesday at 2 o'clock, it's time for WorthPoint Chats with Harry Rinker. I'm Greg Watkins, the editor at WorthPoint, and we're talking with our friend Harry. Where are you today, Harry?
Well, I'm back in Kentwood, Michigan, as you can see from the pile of stuff behind me. One of our viewers commented that, get rid of those piles. I can't do that. I work on the pile system, actually. I mean, I know where everything is, but if anybody would move one of my piles, I would be in big, big, big trouble. I can tell you that right now.
So you work on the don't move the cheese theory at your office.
Well, you know, it is true that I do have a list of missing things. I had it when I had the school in Pennsylvania, and I have it out here in Michigan. Things that I know are here, and even though I've carefully marked all my boxes and everything else, I'm having a little problem finding them, actually. But it's okay. So what if one of them is my big collection of Moravian silver? I'll find it sooner or later. It's here somewhere. I know it is. I know it is. It hasn't gone away. No, but you know, I suppose if you're a collector, you're also a hoarder or a saver. I don't call myself a collector. I call myself a dedicated accumulator. And I tend to accumulate copies of all my emails. Now, I realize in this age of electronics, that's not the way it's supposed to happen, right?
Right.
But I still killing trees. I mean, seriously, there's nothing like the feel of a piece of paper in my hand to document everything. But no, I do keep track of them. I'm trying real hard to end a certain amount of that type of stuff. But you know, when you do what I do, which is, you know, track antiques and collectibles and write my weekly column, Rinker on collectibles, I do research. And if I'm answering a question in the column, I'm just trying to think what I did. Well, recently on the chairs we looked at last week, the Toledo Metal Company, I look up all the history of Toledo Metal Company on there, and I print it all out. And there are boxes here waiting to be shipped to WorthPoint in my reference library with all those printouts, figuring someday somebody's going to put them in there. Probably someday they'll start a big fire and get rid of them all. But no, but you know,
there's some space for your boxes. We'll make sure we get the room.
You do all that research work, Greg, and you don't want to lose it. And you know, every piece of research work you do is another, you know, piece of knowledge base in your head somewhere out there. And so you kind of say to yourself, hey, you know, I'd like to do this. Well, I'm out of file cabinet space in Michigan. I'm out of storage space in Michigan. So things pile up. And you know, I just have trouble discarding old trade papers too. Unfortunately, I don't think we sent the piles and piles of old trade papers down here. We threw them out finally. But you know, I have probably 5 years worth of all the trade papers sitting behind me on the floor, saying someday I'll get to them, or someday I'll go back and need to reference them. But alas, it never happens.
Okay. Well, what are we going to look at today? What?
Well, we're going to do a couple things. First of all, we're going to encourage our listeners to send in questions that they may have about the antiques and collectibles field, what's going on out there. We're going to ask them if they have an object or something they'd like us to talk about, to please do it. We have a way to do that. It's very simple, actually. All they have to do is go send us an email to community@worthpoint.com. Now, community@worthpoint.com. Please attach your pictures, by the way, as JPEG files. That's the easiest way to do them. And give us all the information you can about the object itself. We'd appreciate that a lot. And as you know, I can take a simple question and turn it into a 10-minute discussion on various points about what's going on in the trade. But speaking of what's going on in the trade, I'm going to talk about something before we go look at an object today. And that is that Scott Markets is bringing extravaganzas back to Ohio. Now, the extravaganza weekends, which were huge in the 80s and 90s, and of course, Brimfield, the three big Brimfield weekends are extravaganza weekends, and then Renninger's has extravaganza weekends up in the Reading, Adamstown area in the summer and down in Matador in the winter. And there were a number of extravaganzas held out in the Ohio area. The truth of the matter is that what extravaganza does is take an ordinary flea market and turn it into a major event, maybe anywhere from 2 to 3 times a year or longer. Now, Scott is a major promoter, known largely for the flea markets that he has down around Atlanta. and so forth. But he also has some flea markets up in Ohio, and he is now he's rented the Fayette County Fairgrounds up there near Washington Courthouse, Ohio, and he's going to set up 4 extravaganzas a year. Now, a quick comment about that, because I think this is a case of overkill. I mean, first of all, I'm delighted that we're going to see some more new outdoor shows. I think this adds excitement to the trade, and heavens help us, we need every show we can get out there. And Scott is a fine promoter. I wish he would do 1 extravaganza a year, maybe 2 tops in Ohio, because that makes them special events. When you try to run them 4 times during the outdoor season in the north, it's like every other month. It gets a little bit overdone. Brimfield goes 3 times a year, as does Rinker, and I think, okay, maybe that's all right. But the problem is that what happens is that the dealers that set up in the first of the extravaganzas will come back and do the second and the third and the fourth, and they don't have enough time to replace merchandise as they're out there. So by the third extravaganza, if you've gone to all of them, you'll start to see a lot of the same stuff over and over again. You need, this whole concept of fresh to the market, that something is there and you're going to encounter it for the first time, I still think is a very valid and a very important thing to do. And we need to give these dealers enough time to go to other shows and buy new merchandise, so when they come back to an established show like the Scott's Extravaganzas, they have something fresh and new to offer the people that take the time to come. I mean, today it's a commitment to go to any outdoor show. Even you have to pack up the car. Sometimes you have to stay overnight if you can't get there and back in a day. And you're investing a lot of your time. So you should be entitled as a consumer to see a lot of brand new merchandise out there. Now, Allegan is coming up. That's the big flea market out by me here. It's just south of me. As you know, I live in Kentwood, which is near Grand Rapids, but south of there is Allegan. That's an interesting flea market. That is only open on Sundays, the last Sunday of every month, starting, I think, in April or May, and then closing up in October. Which makes it a little rough for me because I do my radio show Sunday mornings from 8 to 10, and then I have to quick hop in the car. I never worry too much about that because, to be perfectly honest with you, I don't think I have to be the first one through the gate to discover the treasures if you know what you're looking for. But anyway, speaking of treasures, now we can go to, I got an interesting email with an object in it. We'll talk about that at the moment. I know the name Grindle because my parents have a middle-range dinnerware set called Scenes from Constable by Grindle, an English manufacturer of middle-range service, not the porcelain, but glazed over earthenware. Well, what came in was this wonderful soup tureen with an underplate, and here you can see the tureen with its cover in this. And it's nicely marked on the bottom. We'll get that in a minute. Let's stay with the tureen for a second. Soup tureens are very interesting. They are the piece least made in any dinnerware service. The standard 5-place dinnerware service of a dinner plate, salad plate, bread and butter plate, cup and saucer. Those are very, very common entities. Close behind are soup bowls and that type, and demi-tasse pieces and cream soups and that type of thing. And of course, the covered dishes are fairly plentiful, the open dish, but the piece that's made very, very scarcely, or very rarely in terms of scarcity in the lot, is always the soup tureen. So here we have a soup tureen. Now, what makes this soup tureen interesting is its date. This soup tureen dates from the late 19th, early 20th century. And even though it doesn't look that way from this picture, let's go to the underplate a little bit here, the piece that's underneath it here. I think you have an individual photo of that. This is one of the last of the quote-unquote flow blue patterns. Now, theoretically, blue is supposed to go on there, and as the piece is fired, the blue is supposed to flow a little bit, kind of muddying the imagery. Sometimes it's there. But the later period flow blue, it didn't flow all that much. And so instead of saying this is just a cobalt blue pattern, you would find this under the flow blue pattern. When I was researching the pattern, you know, I saw flow blue all over the place. Oh, leave that up there. That's a wonderful slide to talk about too. See, I told you I could find a lot to talk about this stuff. You know, first of all, nobody's going to reproduce this, so you're reasonably safe to assume this is a period piece. But look at the gold highlights here. This is what you want to see. First of all, you see some of the gold is missing. Some of the highlighting has been lost, and you would expect this to happen on older pieces of ceramic because you can't put glaze over gold. If you do, it'll fire muddy brown. So all gilding on ceramics, and in most cases on glass, is above the surface, which means if it's cleaned and roughly used or whatever, there'll be some loss. The other thing, too, about this gold is it's wonderfully mellowed out. Notice how it's soft and warm, and that's, again, another good sign. If that, now you could theoretically, not that you want to do this, you'd be out of your mind to do this, but you could technically polish it up, but you don't want to do that because the minute anybody sees that gold looking like it's real bright and shiny, they're going to assume that that may be a modern reproduction. So, you know, these are all the different tips you can learn about this. Well, anyway, we have this nice blue colored pattern, and you know, blue is always desirable. We talk about colors in the antiques and collectibles trade. We sell it blue, brown, yellow, green, black, white. Well, on the bottom, of course, the tureen itself is marked here with this, and you can see it says Grindle on the bottom and Poppy, and that's Poppy is the name of the pattern, and H.W. Grindle is the manufacturer, English manufacturer. This is not porcelain. This is an earthenware piece. You know, if you try to shine light through it from the bottom, it won't come through. So here we have this mark, and now the question is, can we date the mark? What can we find out about the mark? And now we can talk a little bit about WorthPoint, because WorthPoint has a maps section, right, which is marks, autographs, signatures, and something else. Or what does MAPS stand for?
MAPS is marks, autographs, patterns, and symbols.
Oh, all right. Well, I got two out of the four.
Yeah, right. You did really well. So what we can do with this particular piece, I thought it would be interesting to put it through the Worthopedia item, and then secondly, we can look at the mark. Okay.
Yeah.
So
now you can just type in the mark.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
You can just you can't. Can you scan in the mark as well and let it look for itself or not?
We're working on that.
Oh, you're working.
We're not at that point yet, but we will have image recognition soon.
All right. Go ahead.
All right. So if this is the Worthopedia page on WorthPoint, and I've already put in Gridley Poppy Pattern Tureen, and when we search for it, well, look at that. We've got a couple examples of that item.
Oh, you actually have the tureen up there.
Yes.
Oh, wow. And a price. And a price. Well, that solves my problem. I didn't do that, but I should have done that. No.
So if you are a WorthPoint member, you get to see this price. If you're just the general public, you'll get to see everything that's on this page except for the price. So that's where the WorthPoint membership comes in, making the price guide work for you that way.
No, that's really nice. But also what's nice about this is that you can see where it's sold, in this case on eBay. Wow. Now, you also can see from this that there's a matching ladle, and that's missing from the one that we looked at, right? And you say, well, how important is the ladle? Probably worth about 25% of the value or more, especially if it's absolutely related to the tree. I was a little, I can see in the lid here, there is an opening for the ladle. Okay, so you have that. Also, when you look here, you can also see the date when this sold, right?
Yes, it sold in August of 2010.
Yes, now, but it's not August of 2010 right now. It is March of 2016. So now what do we have here? Well, this is the great news is that we've identified the pattern. We've identified the tureen. Now, it's a little tight on there, but does the guy who sold this, is he providing a date at all for that? Oh, yes, he's, what does he say there?
He says 1891.
Well, you know what? I have a little problem with circa 1891 because if it's 1891, then it's 1891. Yes, I like at the end of the 19th century, somewhere between 1890 and maybe 1910 or so. But nobody's going to care, give or take a date. But now we have to ask ourselves, what's happened to this market since 2010? Well, first of all, if you were just dealing with the tureen market, it's a little bit soft. But what's more importantly is the flow blue market has had some problems. I mean, the flow blue market is really down. Actually, I kind of like the 325 price, although my suspicion is that if you tried to get 225 to 250 for that piece, you'd be struggling in the current market, and it's a shame. It's a shame because it's a handsome. Given the shape and the quality, it's a handsome tree. And there is one of the cases where people are too quick to look everything up and don't understand that there are just some aesthetically pleasing pieces out there that go beyond the standard pricing structure. And I'm not so sure three and a quarter isn't unfair, even in today's marketplace. Getting it, I think, would be tough, especially without the ladle. So, figure 250, 275 without the ladle. But even so, I think it belongs at that price range. But no, there it is. Well, now we found the tureen, right?
Right.
Did we find the mark as well in the mark section, or was there a mark on the bottom in one of those photos?
Well, let's go back and look here. First, we'll look at the mark. Where's the mark? Nope. Here's the mark. Okay.
Yeah.
So the marks searches by keyword. So we're going to search for this globe and two banners here and the name Grindle and see what we come up with first. Okay.
You're not going to put the boat in?
Well, we can try the boat.
No. Go ahead. Let's take what you found there. Okay, you got to do it.
So let me get you guys need to see what I'm seeing here.
No, I'm seeing you.
Yeah, I know. That's not good.
That's not good. No. Here we go. We need to see what you came. You did real well on the other one there. Let's see.
All right. So.
Oh, there you go. And there you
go. So here is.
On the left. Yep, that's the one. But now,
let me get it up here. So it says mark with Earth, globe, and two banners and WH. Okay, right. And I guess that our reproduction doesn't really show what that is a ship very well, but this is the main Grindle mark, and that top banner is blank because that I would imagine is where the pattern name would be put in.
Right. Yeah, and you can find any one of a number of patterns. Now do we have a date for the mark on there? Oh, date of use. I see it 1891 to 1914, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and look, this is what I always love guys that are selling stuff. If they see it says circa 1891 to 1914, do you think they're going to put 1914 in there?
No, they're going with the earliest date.
They're going to always go with that's unbelievable. I mean, it drives me nuts. I got to tell you sometimes when you see how that works. But nevertheless, there it is. But look what you've learned. Now you've learned that you're looking at this wonderful soup tureen. We know the pattern name. We have a rough. We have a price we can look at. And look at the existing market for that type of thing. Now we have a date. I mean, man, everything you need to know, except for the fact, well, we also know that there is a matching ladle in the series, and the set is not made of three pieces, the lid, the tureen base, and the underplate, but it's made up of the lid, the base, the underplate, and the thing. And that's important to know, too, because, sets are sets if they're complete, okay? And so maybe you could find the ladle, but still in all, a lovely little piece. So look what we found. A lot of nice information about that, right?
Right. And the way that the maps product works, you can go to WorthPoint and go to the map search bar and put in those keywords and you'll get the image. But all this extra information about the company name and the dates and all of that, that's the subscription. So you must subscribe to Maps to be able to get this information. And otherwise, you can find the mark, and the mark will tell you what it says right here on the headline. But all this other information is hidden, and that's where you need to be a subscriber to the marks.
You know, if you try to get a reference book to look that up, first of all, okay, the Godden book, which is the main reference book for English pottery marks, which I happen to have a copy of, is almost $100 or more to buy it, okay, and then you got to go thumbing through it. Hope you get to where you need to go. So, you know, this is quick and efficient, and you know, if you're going to look up marks on a regular basis, you're going to spend a couple of $1,000s to create a marks library, at which point it's cheaper to do a subscription along and get all this other information along with it too. By the way, want to talk briefly about another thing. Now, I'm a big fan of Antique Week. You know, when people ask me what kind of trade paper should I acquire, I always tell them you should have 3 trade papers. You should have Main Antique Digest for the middle and upper end of the market. You should have Antique Week for the middle and lower end of the market, although they cover some up-end stuff too. And then you should have your local regional paper, whichever the paper is that's serving your region down there. What makes Antique Week and Main Antique Digest different is they cover all the aspects of the trade, the good, the bad, the ugly, and you name it. And so you get all kinds of stuff. Well, I mentioned the what issue was the March 21st issue with the Scots thing. In that same and by the way, there's an Eastern and a Central edition, but each come with a national edition. If you live in the East, you get the Eastern edition. If you live in the Central area, you get the Central edition. I've always gotten the Central edition. I like it because it has a little bit more in than the Eastern edition. But anyway, in there is an interesting article by Brett Weiss about Bob Dylan's archives finding a home in the Tulsa Museum. One of the things that so many of stars, and whether they're musicians or movie stars or writers or whomever, are now realizing that their archives are worth money. You know, and you know, the old days they die and leave them to a museum, which of course a museum liked. Although today a museum will say, well, if you're not leaving us money to maintain them, we may not want them. So you should always double check that. But in this particular case, Dylan, and I'm not gonna fight him for this, sold them. He sold them to the George Kaiser Family Foundation, who then donated them to the University of Tulsa. And so all of a sudden, we know that these institutions, if they want an archives or a set of documents or an important set of information, I mean, I once ran across a tremendous amount of information on the Lehigh Canal, which was found up in an attic of an old store in Catasauqua, Pennsylvania, that served as a headquarters building for that portion of the Lehigh Canal. And, you know, the local museum wanted them, and the young people that found them, you know, needed some money and so forth. I said, sell them to them. And they said, what? I said, oh, yeah. So we approached them, and we gave them a price, and they thought long and hard about it, but they met it. And so, you know, sometimes you don't have to give it to them. Now, you know, this again was another one of those situations where you have to be real careful, because if there's not going to be any money coming along to maintain the collection, then they're not going to pay as much as you might think. But it's just an interesting article. And one more thing, I mean, I have a couple of blocks of information here that should be in museums. But the thing about it is, if you're, well, no, wait a minute here. Think about this. Now, now you have to remember, I had a 15-year career in the museum game, right?
Right.
And so I have a knowledge about how some museums, especially local museums, take care of stuff. And so, excuse me, I'm not always certain that's where I want my things to go. But I have some collections that could go to some major museums. Hang in there. I mean, I'm getting a kind of dry throat. This is not gin, but just tea. Okay, there we go. Anyway, but I have a collection of very important things that I think Winterthur would be fascinated to own. And so I'm torn between whether I should donate them to them and take a tax write-off, or whether I should be totally greedy and offer to sell them. But here's my thinking. I would never have owned them if somebody had donated them to a museum before, right? I had to buy them. Right. So they want my stuff. They pay for it. Well, it's also very, very difficult. I mean, people don't understand that when they donate a collection to a museum and title transfers, then the museum can do with it whatever they want. Okay, which means dispose of it if it's not within there. I mean, these people have these feelings that when they donate collections of stuff to museums, there's going to be a display of them and their family name's going to get plastered all over the wall and all the rest of this. Well, you better negotiate that as part of the deal or it's not going to happen. And museums don't like to be forced into that anyway because they have to change exhibits to keep people coming back. I mean, what's the sense of coming back if it's the same old stuff all the time? I mean, some museums will have changing exhibit galleries and permanent exhibits, but that's less and less common these days, especially since, you know, today most museums have these electronic things so the kids get punch boards and play with computers and learn that way. You almost wonder why they even bother to have objects anymore. But anyway, speaking of objects, do we have another object I sent you?
Yeah, we do. We've got this baseball pennant.
Yes, we do. There's a story behind why I sent it to you, besides the fact that the Philadelphia Athletics are not in Philadelphia anymore, nor are they in Kansas City. They're in Oakland at the moment. Anyway, I went to my first baseball game in Shibe Park in Philadelphia, and Shibe, along with Connie Mack, was one of the two families that owned the interest in the Athletics. And I will tell you what my experience was. I had my wallet lifted as a young kid. I was totally discouraged from ever going to baseball again. But this is Connie Mack's Athletics, and he managed the team for 50 years. Now, the person that sent me this pennant, picture of the pennant, said, we think it's from the 50s. And I went up on the net. Now, this is one of those things where, you know, you love this type of stuff. I must say that I must have looked at 50 pennants. And to be honest with you, I couldn't find this athletic pennant. Now, you may notice the white elephant in the back, right?
Right.
Well, you may ask, why is there a white elephant? And even if you don't ask, I'm going to answer the question anyway. And that is that when the Athletics first got started, one of the owners of one of the teams in New York was not happy about their arrival into the National League and called them a white elephant. So Connie Mack decided, hey, what a great team symbol. And then he went on a couple years later to win the World Series to show that his team wasn't a white elephant, but they used the white elephant all the time. Now, the thing about it is, at first I thought this pennant had to be from the 40s while Mack was still managing. But Connie Mack's son took over. And when you look at the guy by the elephant, you blow him up. You had him blown up here a second ago. It looks like Connie Mack's son. Connie Mack Jr. managed a team in the 50s before it got sold in 54. And I think this is probably from the 50s. Now, it's a great little piece, but now we come to how much is it worth? Well, if there's a guy collecting baseball pennants, that's one price. But so much of sports memorabilia deals with the team and the city. And the problem is the Athletics aren't in Philadelphia anymore. The Athletics are in Oakland. And the other thing about it is that most of us who remember the Athletics being in Philadelphia are dying or getting extremely old anyway. I'm not planning on dying soon. But the thing about it is that this pennant is going to have multiple values depending where it is. If it's in the Philadelphia area and you can find an A's person, I think you're looking at $45, $50. I mean, it looks really neat to me, although there's no measurement with it. So I'm hoping I'm talking about a big pennant, not some tiny little funky thing. But the other thing is you get it out here to Michigan and you're talking maybe about a $20, $25 pennant because who cares about the Athletics in the middle, the Philadelphia Athletics in the middle of Michigan. So, you know, this is, and if you're an Oakland Athletic fan, you might want to buy it because it's a historical precedent of the team, but not really on that. Well, let's get two quick plugs in before we get done with this week's session. First of all, I want to mention my study, Institute for the Study of Antiques and Collectibles. We are taking reservations for the Summer Institute, and there you can see how to find it. Just go to my website, harryrinker.com, and click on Institute. We've got 3 courses this summer, one on researching antiques and collectibles, a 2-day course, one on paintings, prints, and watercolors, a 2-day course, and a third course called Toys, Games, and Puzzles. Get all the information up there. We also want to remind everybody that we do this every week so that we can have you send in your questions, and so I can talk about what you're interested in. Send your questions or an object you'd like me to talk about to community at WorthPoint.com.
All right. Well,
I didn't give you a chance to ask any questions this week.
well, we talked about the marks in the library.
We did.
And the Worthopedia, and that was that's the goal for these webcasts, is to talk about, in addition to how you go about the theory of identifying antiques and collectibles, but also the fact that WorthPoint is there to help you do that. WorthPoint has more than 300 million pieces of sales data. That soup tureen was just one of them. And the marks database is now over 100,000 different marks, patterns, autographs, and symbols. And we keep adding to those every month. So I think today's episode went well.
Yes, and we will do it next Tuesday at 2 p.m. And then there may be some kind of strange schedule in April, because I will be in Washington, D.C. the following, I think, down for the Citizen Stamp Advisory Committee meeting. And then I have to go to Germany to attend a funeral of a friend. Yes, Hans Martin Hertlein, who's I consider my brother. His brother-in-law, Eric, died, and I've known Eric for over 50 years, too. So I'm going to fly over there. So we'll see if we can do a broadcast from Germany or not. Hey, it's the internet, and it's global. So
that's right.
We'll have to check the timing and availability of equipment, but we'll see. But if we have to move it from Tuesday at 2, we'll give you a week's notice or more.
That's right. We will post it online and here on YouTube and the WorthPoint Facebook page, and so you will know where you can catch us live. And if you don't watch it live, you can always go to the WorthPoint YouTube channel and see all the archived editions of the WorthPoint Chats with Harry. So right. For this week, Harry, let's say goodbye.
All right, goodbye and be well, everybody. We'll hopefully get some letters or questions into community@worthpoint.com here in the weeks ahead and see where we go from there. All right?
All right, goodbye, Harry.
Goodbye.